We might be at the height of celebrity saturation. Celebrities, anywhere on the scale of living, breathing deities to just your influencer next door, are so plentiful and their content is so accessible that we simply have no choice but to stan. And with this widespread celebrity culture, there are a lot of ethical dilemmas that arise which deserve careful consideration. Today, I want to focus on just one somewhat niche dilemma about how fans fantasize about their favorite celebrities. Some fans dream about dating their bias, and some fans dream about their bias dating their other bias. Let's talk about that. Briefly, let's discuss why fans ship real people and why fans ship generally. I'm not sure there is one single answer, but I am going to make the argument that it isn't exclusively for porn. I mean, that's part of it, sure, but if that were the primary purpose, I think we'd see less safe-for-work fan art and fan fiction and related content than we do. I personally believe that fans get invested in shipping as a proxy to explore relationship and character dynamics that they are curious about. In my own experience, it's an obsession that can grow from struggling to understand your relationship to others and your relationship to yourself. Most shippers seem to have certain relationship dynamics that they prioritize, and it usually says a lot about what an individual person is trying to work through. The unfortunate thing is that we often don't spend enough time analyzing why we fixate on specific dynamics and using that information to work on ourselves. Ideally, shippers would be consciously processing the implications of their fantasies rather than sending death threats because someone doesn't favor their preferred ship. However, I don't want to suggest that it's irrational to ship at all. I think it is reasonable to seek out content that allows you to explore your personal fixations from a safe distance. If you have any compulsion to ship at all, it's pretty easy to find yourself shipping real people, at least in a casual way. Maybe you like to ship a pair of fictional characters who are portrayed by actors. This can often lead to quasi-shipping of the real people playing those characters. Maybe you follow influencers who frequently collaborate with each other and encourage you to invest in their friendship. Or maybe you're a fan of a celebrity couple and you find yourself fascinated by their relationship despite the fact that they are just as likely to break up as any other couple. Much has been made of the ethics of shipping in general, but the majority consensus seems to be that if you want to ship two fictional characters, then go for it. I mean, as long as they don't have an incredibly imbalanced power dynamic that would make the ship untenable in real life, obviously. Now, if only we could agree on what that means. Fictional characters, by virtue of being fictional, cannot consent to having fan fiction written about them. They also can't be harmed by it. They're fictional. Side note, although fictional content doesn't have an impact on the fictional characters portrayed in the content, it can have a real impact on the people who consume it, so it's fictional is not the best catch-all excuse. I want to talk more about this in another essay, but suffice to say, boundaries in content consumption is a good thing, and you should find yours. So, celebrities, contrary to popular belief, are real people. And fan-made content about them can affect them. I've seen a range of reactions, mostly from influencers, about being shipped. At best, it seems to be amusing. At worst, it can be disturbing and disruptive to the actual relationship that exists. To further complicate things, celebrities can't always make a statement about how they feel about being shipped. It might be too taboo to discuss openly. It could also imbalance the delicate parasocial relationship they have with fans that maintains their financial stability. Many fans are quite hostile to any critique of their behavior from the person they supposedly idolize because they feel ownership over their career. And sometimes celebrities do give a statement that they don't like being shipped, and fans disregard the request. We also have to take into account that, depending on the closeness between celebrity and audience, getting shipped by your fans may feel very different. Shipping Kanye with himself is a meme that seems harmless because he has attained a level of status that makes him untouchable to fans or to almost any ordinary person. But shipping two YouTubers who regularly converse with their fans and read all their comments? Well, obviously it depends, because I think we've reached a point where we see some YouTubers attain similarly untouchable status, but that's not the point. For influencers who make their living based on a perceived connection with their fans, it can be really awkward and difficult to avoid the fantasies that fans have about them. The way things are right now, the unwritten rule seems to be that it is acceptable to ship celebrities as long as you don't directly involve them in whatever shipping activity you undertake. That is to say, you don't tweet directly at them talking about ships, you don't send them fan fiction or fan art unsolicited, and you certainly don't talk about ships if you happen to meet them in person. Of course, I'd be lying if I tried to imply that all shippers actually respect this particular moral code. Some don't, and God, they make it hard for us quieter freaks to maintain a decent reputation. I don't need to debate whether fans should engage with real people they like and talk about their fantasies or even reference them unprovoked. Obviously, that's way overstepping boundaries and I condemn it. There is a debate to be had, however, about whether any shipping content about real people should exist at all, no matter how well tagged and hidden in pockets of the internet. In doing some basic research on this topic, I discovered the term RPF, which stands for Real People Fiction, which is used to describe, essentially, the fictionalizing of real people who you've never met and probably never will meet. The persona curated by celebrities or influencers is generally the thing that fans treat as fiction open to interpretation. I think there are varying levels of awareness of the difference between a celebrity's curated persona and their full reality as a person, and some fans create and consume RPF with a clear distinction in their minds between the persona they fictionalize and the person the fiction is based on. I say this in part because sometimes people argue against shipping real people by trying to prove that two celebrities show no romantic interest in each other, which I think is a point only effective on a minority of shippers. Most of them don't believe their faves are in a real relationship, they're more invested in their hybrid ex-vampire AU, and this isn't about reality. In a sense, shipping real people is not that different from fantasizing about having a relationship with a celebrity, which, due to the parasocial marketing of celebrities, is both common and normal. In the same way that celebrities often attempt to create a relationship with fans that leaves open the possibility to imagine having a romantic relationship with them, it's also common to try to raise a celebrity's social capital by relating them to other celebrities and encouraging fans to invest in the relationship between them. I've never been interested in any self-insert fanfiction or the general idea of obsessing over a celebrity because you like the idea of dating them. When I see a "imagine BTS members' reaction if you cheat on them" post, well, first I think, I can't go anywhere without hearing about BTS. Then I think, that's weird. Why does anyone enjoy reading that? But I've read plenty of fanfiction that centered around cheating. The only difference in these two kinds of celebrity-driven fantasies is the involvement of the fan within the fantasy. In a way, both the fan who wants to be involved with their celebrity crush and the fan who wants to imagine their preferred celebrity involved with someone else are engaging in a type of voyeurism, which understandably can be quite creepy. I think it is good to recognize the creepy aspect of this behavior because this particular brand of fanaticism isn't always treated as such because of the people associated with the behavior. Teenage girls, ridiculed though they are for being frivolous and obsessive, are generally spared from being accused of anything that implies they have real sexual desire. The same is mostly true of adult women, especially depending on their perceived class and race. White women in particular get away with a lot of behavior that should rightfully be called creepy, and we aren't doing anyone any favors by not calling a spade a spade. I also use the word creepy because it isn't a moral judgment, it's an aesthetic judgment. In my experience, sometimes getting an aesthetic judgment prompts more desire to change than a moral one, because the response to a moral judgment is usually resistance and defensiveness. Speaking of my experience, I personally have only ever shipped celebrities in the context of K-pop, which is a fandom that seems to lend itself to RPF very well. As an English-speaking fan reading fanfiction in English on sites dedicated to fanfiction, it's easy to feel that my behavior was undetectable to the people the fanfiction was written about, and therefore basically not creepy at all. I've rarely seen fan art that is in any way explicit, but it is usually heavily password protected. But K-pop idols definitely know about shipping, and they generally lean into it in a wink-wink, nudge-nudge kind of way. A way that seems to say, I know that you know that I know that you're a little into this, and that's weird, but also you pay my bills, so what the hell? When I was most actively into K-pop, which was recently, but it's been a solid year since I was really in the game, I was heavily invested in shipping my favorite members of my favorite band. It definitely began as me just having two favorite members and being interested in their interactions, but as I normalized the idea of shipping these two people, I got pretty obsessed with the idea of this relationship. This fantasy never reached a level of delusion where I actually believed the relationship was real, but I definitely obsessed unnecessarily over the smallest of interactions. I felt entitled to the commodified persona they presented, viewing it as a fictional entity I could fantasize about guilt-free. It's so easy to justify one's own behavior in order to feel comfortable maintaining it, and I really can't criticize anyone watching this video thinking, yikes. What I'm doing in this essay is definitely teetering dangerously between trying to examine my own patterns of behavior and trying to justify them. When I first started shipping, it was something that I did very uncritically, and given that I was underage at the time, that seems like something to be expected even if it wasn't ideal. Shipping is still something I am drawn to as an adult, although it is something I do differently now. Certainly, I am less emotionally consumed by it, and I definitely can't engage with it uncritically anymore. I'm really trying to find an answer for myself and also see if I can help someone else on their mission to become, marginally less of a creep. If I'm ever going to ship real people again, but I also don't know if that's because I grew as a person and developed a moral conscience, or if it's just because my interest happened to have changed. I think the takeaway for shippers, especially younger and impressionable shippers, is not that they should feel terrible shame. You should feel only an adequate amount of shame. You probably are going to be embarrassed later, and you probably are cringy, and that's okay. I think it is healthy to self-examine your fixations and also to accept outside criticism of what you enjoy, and especially the content you take time to produce and promote. If you're unable to do this, it's definitely a red flag that your fixation is unhealthy. Here's my prescription for what I think is best practice, given that shipping of real people and RPF in general probably isn't going to disappear overnight. I mean, unless one of you anti-shippers finds a way to burn it all to the ground. I certainly won't stop you. If you have a fantasy about a real person, celebrity or otherwise, they shouldn't have to know about it unless they wish to. This could look like keeping your fanfiction exclusively on fanfiction-dedicated sites, or even keeping your content password locked so it isn't accessed unwittingly. Yeah, it's pretty much the same rule I brought up earlier. I haven't been able to come up with anything better yet. I would also add, though, that if you get feedback from a real person, the celebrity you care about, or even from another fan, that your work is upsetting, then really take that complaint seriously and reassess your actions. I'm not saying you have to make everyone happy, but at least listen to criticism. It might actually really help you. And God, I really shouldn't have to say it, but to be clear, you should not ship or fantasize about real people who are minors, especially if you are not a minor. And if you are a minor yourself, exploring your sexuality through fantasy about celebrities, I highly encourage you to do this like anywhere but the internet. The imagination requires $0 to use, and you will almost certainly find yourself in a much, much healthier place if you allow your interests to develop naturally, rather than jumping down a rabbit hole of increasingly more extreme content, which is the 18+ landscape online. Ultimately, though, if you're an adult and you want to jack off to a fantasy about another adult, my hot take is that's okay. But please remember, you are not immune to being a creep, and if you want to maintain some standard of decency, I recommend setting clear boundaries and reassessing them over time. So yeah, that's all for now. If you watch this, my first video essay ever, you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. I'm kind of imagining this video going out into the void to be seen by, maybe 4 people. But let's pretend we need to encourage audience engagement. Tell me in the comments if you are or have ever been a shipper of anything, not necessarily real people. What do you think drew you to it? Have you learned anything about yourself from the experience, or is it still a work in progress? And if you're not a shipper, and you never have been, God bless you. Why do you watch this video?